romantic triangles. Until now, Daphne could hide behind confusions, duty, family problems, business pressures, misunderstandings, and the mistakes made by the people around her. She always had another reasons for denying the trust about her hurts. However, what happens after the accident has changed the meanings of every relationships around her. Losing part of her memory strategy gave Daphne something she had never been able to give herself while thinking clearly, freedom from the past. For a short period, she did not every argument, betrayal, secret, fear, or painful decisions in her mind. She simply looked at Kadir as someone else to her, someone she believed was her husband, and that mistake created a strange kind of honesty. Her mind was confused, but some of the emotional reactions were clearer than they had been before. This is why the next part of the story should not be seen simply as Daphne remembering what happens. The important question is what Daphne will do after remembering how she felt. Was she had forgotten everything else? The previous part gave the audience an unusual version of Daphne. She will still intelligent uh, and strong, but many of all she normally carries around herself were temporarily missing before the accident. She spent too much time calculating very choice might cost. She worried about Kadir, Tolga, her family, her work, the secret around them, and the consequence of every emotional move. After the accident, she suddenly entered Kadir Wood without understanding the complete history between them, believing that Kadir was her husband, placed her directly inside the life she had been avoiding. It was almost if the story allowed Daphne to experience possible futures before the consciously choose it. She saw what daily closeness with Kadir could feel like. She could observe him outside their usual better. She could see him care without immediately placing every past disagreement between them. For Kadir, the situation was even more difficult because he knows the trust while Daphne did not. He had to leave the woman left while knowing that the closeness he was receiving came from a misunderstanding. This made the entire situations emotionally dangerous being because every beautiful moment also carrying guilt. This is why I think the returns of Daphne memory will create a much stronger problem than the memory lose itself. When Daphne finally understands the complete situation, she will not only remember the faces, she will remember that everybody around her knows some things she did not. She will realize that people allowed the false marriage situations to continue because they believe that trust could harm her recovery. She may logically understand why did they it, but emotionally she will feel exposed. Daphne is a character who needs control. She does not enjoy feelings weak, dependent, or easy to manipulate. Discovering that an entire emotional reality was built around her while she could not remember the trust will hurt the bride. Kadir will become the easiest person for her blame because he was at the center of the reality. Even if he behaved carefully, Daphne may first believe that he benefited from her condition. The important thing is that Her anger does not mean she stopped loving him. In fact, the angers may become so powerful previously because her feelings became stronger during those strange days. The coming wedding renewals therefore looks less like a romantic endings and more like the beginnings of a complicated emotional test. Daphne appears ready to turn the situations around. Instead, the remaining the person who was fault. She may decide to become the persons controlling the game. That is where the revenge idea become important. Daphne may act as though she still want to continue the marriage fantasy because she want Kadir to understand what it felt like to live inside a reality that live inside a reality that was not completely honest. She may plan to take him close to the moment when everything feels perfect and then real that she remembers the trust from definite points of view. This could feel like justice. She could be taking back control. She could be showing Kadir that she is not someone who can simply be protected through lies without consequence. Yet the problems with this plan is obvious. A revenge plan only works then when the person's taking revenge is emotionally distant. Daphne is not emotionally distant from Kadir. Every step she takes toward hurting him could also bring her closer to admitting how much he matters. That is why I do not believe Daphne's plan will remain simple for every long. At the beginning, she may convince herself that everything is under control. She can arrange the renewed wedding, smile in front of everyone, allow Kadir to think that their relationship is becoming real, and wait for the perfect moment to expose the trust. But the closer they move toward that ceremony, the more difficult the plan should become. Daphne will see Kadir's excitement. She will see that he is not treating the situations as a joke. For him, even a ceremony created for confusions may represent something he deeply wants that will force Daphne to ask whether she is pushing a man who intentionally harmed efforts for a man who made a had decisions because he was afraid of losing her. There is a huge emotional difference between these two things. The series will probably use that the difference is to pull Daphne in opposite directions. Kadir, meanwhile, may enter the next stage with more than he had for a long time. The false marriage situation has given him a picture of the life he could have. Daphne, he have been her side his home. He has been ordinary moments that are more powerful than a dramatic declarations. Uh, Romantic stories often focus on large gestures, but the strongest change between Daphne and Kadir may comes from small daily habits, sharing a space, uh, worry about one another's becoming comfort is silence, noticed what his others person's needs without being asked, and feeling the absence of the other person's why they leave can reveal much more than our dramatic confessions. Kadir may have realized that what he wants from Daphne is not simply victory over Tolga. He wants a real life with her. That understanding will make him much more invaluable when Daphne begins her revenge. This difference between love and competition will become extremely important for both men. Tolga has often behaved as thought Kadir is the main obstacle standing between them, and Daphne Kadir has sometimes reacted in the same competitive way. Both men can become too focused on one another and forget that Daphne is the person making could finally destroy the pattern. If Kadir feels that Daphne is geniusly choosing him, he may stop caring about defeating Stolga and start caring only about protecting the relationship. Stolga, however, may move in the opposite direction. The more he feels Daphne moving away from him, the more desperate he may become. The change, the result, the difference could transform the triangle. Instead of two men fighting equally for Daphne, we may see one man learning to trust her choice, while the other struggles to accept that the choice may no longer have favors him. Tolga reactions could become one of the biggest sources of tensions. From his perspective, the entire situation is deeply unfair. Daphne accident created a conditions in which she believed Kadir was already her husband. That misunderstandings gave Kadir a level of emotional access Tolga could never have under normal circumstances. Tolga may believe that Kadir received an advantage through even that had nothing to do with Daphne's true decisions. When Daphne later appears willing to renew the marriage, Tolga may suspect that the confusion her permanently change her feelings. He may become convinced that if he does nothing, he will lose her. That fear can make even a normally confident person act internationally. Tolga's biggest mistake may be believing that he needs to save Daphne from Kadir's rather than allowing Daphne to decide what she wants. A good prediction for Tolga is that he will first try to expose the situations rather than directly stop the weddings. He may search for proof that Kadir behaved selfishly during Daphne memory loss. He could question what happens inside the house. Who knew the trust when Daphne started remembering and whether Kadir noticed signs that the memory had returned. Tolga may believe if the can prove Kadir crossed an ethical line, Daphne will walk away from him. However, uh, this investigating could produce the opposite result. Tolga may discover that Kadir struggles with the situations and did not simply enjoy deceiving Daphne. If that trust becomes clear, Tolga will have to confront something much harder than a villainous rival. He will have to confront the possibility that Kadir geniusly loves her. The story becomes even more interesting if Daphne remembers everything um, earlier than everyone realized. The official direction strongly suggests that her memories are returning, but the exact moment when she fully understands the power can be used a major twist. Daphne may allow people to continue behaving that her recovery is incomplete. This would fit perfectly with her desires to regain control. She could quietly observe everyone. She could watch who behave honestly when they think she does not remember. She could test Kadir without telling him that she understands the situation. She could also test Tolga. In that case, the next part will become less about Daphne begins manipulated and more about Daphne becoming the smartest person in the room. If Daphne begins testing the people around her, Kadir may unknowingly pass several of those tests. She might create opportunities for him to take advantage of her belief that they are married. Instead, Kadir may repeatedly chooses restraint. He may refuse to use her confusions of emotional or physical closeness she could not choose with full knowledge. He may become uncomfortable, whatever the situation goes too far. Daphne could internationally interrupt this distance as proof that he does not care enough, only to later understand that it is actually proof that he cares more than she thought. Respect is likely to become the key difference between the men. The story has spent a long time building attractions, jealousy, and conflict, but respect may finally determine who Daphne can trust with her futures. Daphne's revenge plan may therefore begins to collapse from inside. She can organize events, control information, and creates a ceremony, but she cannot fully control what she feels while doing it. Imagines her preparing for the wedding with the intentions of embarrassing Kadir. At first, she may treat the entire thing like a legal strategy. She knows the goal, she understands the step, and she believes she can separate emotions from actions. Yet seeing herself in bridal clothing could affect her more than expected. The visual image could force her to imagine what a real marriage with Kadir might looking like. Suddenly the game would be strongly feels completely fake. Every details around her could turn into questions about the future she had been refusing to consider. This is also where the idea of watching a baby becomes very important, not necessarily because Daphne will immediately decide she truly wants a deepest of the marriage fantasy. Talking about a child transform the game from a temporary romantic trick into an imagined lifetime marriage. Can still be treated as a ceremony or public perform. The idea is of building a family forces that both things beyond the present moment. Daphne may introduce the subject and part of our revenge because she knows is shock Kadir. She may expect him to become the frightening and stay away. It that happens. She can tell herself this his love was never serious, but I suspect Kadir response will surprise her rather than running away. He may quality sure that the idea of a future with Daphne does not scare him. That response could break the major part of Daphne's plan. If she expects Kadir to panic and he instead becomes emotional, hopeful, or thoughtful, Daphne will suddenly become the person under pressure. She may have the use idea to test, but this answers may force him to test herself. Could be actually hate the idea of a family with Kadir, or does they only throw frightening her because it is the moral? Then she wants to admit. Daphne has spent much for the adult's life building independence. She has learned to carry responsibilities alone. Depending on another person may feel dangerous of her. Love threat the system she has built because the real love requires trust, and trust means accepting that an other person has the power to disappoint you. Kadir represents that a risk. The baby questions may symbolize the largest possible versions of that risk. The revenge storyline will be strongest if Daphne slowly discovered that the biggest problem is not Kadir's deceptions but her own fears. It is easier to stay angry with Kadir than to admit that she was happy believing she was his life. Anger gives Daphne power, happiness, but her makes her valuable when she remembers the moment spent with Kadir. She may feel embarrassed by how naturally she accepted him. She may wonder whether the accident created those feelings or simply removed the um, Daphne's hiding them. These questions can follow her through the entire next chapter. She may repeatedly tell herself that those days were not real because her memory was damaged. Yet her emotional reactions were still here. Nobody could manufacture every moment of comfort, jealousy, safety, or attractions she experienced. Kadir may also struggles with the same questions. For the others' directions, he may wonders whether he has the right to trust anything Stephanie did with while he believed they were married. If she showed affections, should he treat that affection as real? If she depended on him, was it because she loved him or because she believed her husband? Kadir may believe afraid of amusing too much. This could make him surprisingly cautious. Even after Daphne starts moving closer, he may want her to choose him again with a clear mind. That desires could create a major emotional differences from earlier part of the story. Kadir could no longer be satisfied with winning a moment he could want currently. This could lead to one of the most meaningful change in her characters. Instead of aggressively proposing Daphne, Kadir may decide to keep after realizing her memory has returned. He may even tell her through his behavior that she owns his nothings because of what happened. These does not need to be a large dramatic speech. His actions can show that he will not force the relationships forward. He may prepare himself to close her if that is what she chooses with full knowledge for Daphne that would be extremely confusing. She may have preparing herself from a battle, but Kadir refuses to fight could destroy the structures of her revenge. It is difficult to punish someone who accepts responsibilities and gives you freedom. At the same time, Tolga may see Kadir distance as an opportunity. He may believe the relationship has finally awaked and move closer to Daphne again. Yet this could reveal why Daphne's feelings have changed. The old version of Daphne might have been impressed by Tolga's confidence and persistence. The new Daphne and experience quite can care with Kadir may begins to see contact pressures differently. She may compare how each man reacts when she asks for space. If Kadir respects the safe and Tolga tries to fill it, that comparisons could become decisions. Tolga does not need to become a bad person for this to happen. In fact, the story will be more interesting in his actions comes from real love mixed with fear. He may truly believe that Daphne is making a mistake. He may remember every time Kadir hurt her and convince himself that allowing her to Returns to Kadir would be irresponsible. However, love becomes unhealthy when it stops respecting the other person's judgment. Tolga's challenge is to understand that protecting Daphne does not mean choosing for her. If he fails to learn straight lessons, he may push Daphne father's away, even while believing he is pulling her closer. Another important part of the coming story could be Kadir's family. The fake marriage has already brought Daphne into a family space she did not expect to enter in this way. Family reactions can become more powerful when Daphne memory returns. Some people may feel guilty about participating in the deceptions, others may become emotionally attached to the idea of Daphne and Kadir as a couple that create a new kind of pressure. Even if Daphne wants distance, she may discover that relationships around them have already changed. She is no longer simply Kadir's complicated romantic interest. People have begun image her as part of his futures. This can create both comedy and conflict. The family may become excited about the reunion weddings without understanding the hidden revenge plan. They could begin preparing real celebrations around something Daphne originally intended as a trick. Every new preparations would make it harder for her to stop the plan without hurting innocent people. Decorations, clothes, food, invitations, family excitement, and emotional expectations could transform Daphne's private revenge into a public event much larger than she intended. This is exactly the kind of situation that works well in a romantic dramatic drama because of her characters begins with control but loses control through her own plan. But Daphne tried to keep the event small only to discover that the pupils around Kadir will not allow it. But begins as a clear way to teach him a lesson could slowly looks like a real wedding. The more real it becomes, the more Daphne emotions will become visible. She may uh, find herself caring about small details even though she claims none of them matters. She might reject one noticed and insist on another's. She may become nervous about how she looks. She may notice Kadir watching her on become comfortable because the expressions on his face does not match the revenge story in her mind. He will not look like a man begins tricked. He will look like a man seeing the life he wants. That image could create guilt in Daphne, but guilt alone will not end the plan. Daphne may still believe Kadir needs to understand the consequence of hiding the trust from her. Therefore, instead of completely avoiding revenge, she would change its purpose. At first, she wants to trust him. Later, she may want to force an honest conversation. This difference is important. Revenge can become a test. Daphne could push Kadir toward admitting everything he felt and everything he feared. She may want to hear whether he enjoyed the false marriage, whether is were real the image enjoy the false marriage, whether he wished it was real, whether he never considers feelings, telling her the trust despite the doctor's warnings, and whether he found still chooses her rejected after him remembering everything. Kadir honestly during these confrontations could entire the directions of the relationships. If he tries to Daphne himself too strongly. Daphne may become colder if the simply accept that the situations under her. She may often the strongest becomes would be Kadir, admitting through his actions that parts of him was happy during those days. Even though he knew the reasons was wrong, that is a painful trust, but it is believable. He can regret the deceptions while still admitting that living beside Daphne felt like something he wanted. Such honesty would be much more meaningful than claiming he felt nothing. Daphne may then face an uncomfortable realization. She too was happy. Her happiness was based on incomplete information, but the connection itself was not completely invented. The accident did not create Kadir's personality. It does not create the way he looked after her. I did not create their natural energy together. It simply changed the story. Daphne believes about their relationships that this distraction is likely to become central if she separates the false information from the real emotions. She may understand why the experience affected her so deeply. This does not mean Daphne and Katir should immediately become a peaceful couple that would remove too much tension too quickly. Instead, I expect the renewed weddings of a create a temporary emotional high followed by another major complication. The story needs to allow move forward while keeping unresolved problems alive. The most likely secure of that complication is that the past Kadir history, the secret around his family, Tolga involvement, Lala choices, and the business conflict have not disappeared just because Daphne and Kadir became closer. Romantic happiness may make those secret more dangerous because there is now more to close. Lala could become especially important in this transition. She has been involved in plan and conflict that affected Daphne and Kadir relationships. If she sees Daphne moving permanently toward Kadir, she may realize that the old methods are no longer working. She could entire becomes more aggressive or begins protecting herself. A person involved in several secret often becomes dangerous when they feel abandoned by their allies. Lela may hold information that Tolga does not want revealed. She may also know details about earlier events that Daphne has not fully understood. If the romantic triangle begins settling it, Kadir favors the series may shift toward those hidden trust as the next major conflict. One prediction is that Lela will attempt to interrupt the wedding's plan, not sincerely because she cares about the marriage itself, but because a united Daphne and Kadir are more difficult to manipulate than two peoples who distrust each other. Their greatest weakness have always been misunderstandings. If they start communicating honesty, pupils who depend on secret lose powers. Lala therefore has a reasons to create one final misunderstandings before the ceremony. She might present Daphne with selective information, a photograph, a message, a documents, or a piece of Kadir past without explaining the full context. The goal would not be to prove something completely false. The best manipulations usually contact enough trust to be believable. Daphne's reactions to such a move will show whether she has truly changed. Earlier, she might have immediately believed he lost because she already feared trusting Kadir. Now, after the memory loss experience, she may pause. She may still become angry, but instead of silently withdrawing, she could confronting Kadir that single change would represent real development. Many of their previous problems became larger because they did not speak only soon enough. If Daphne speak, ask for the trust before making a decision. The relationships will move forward, even if the conversations itself painful. Kadir may also change his unusual reactions. He cannot answer suspicious with pride. If Daphne asks difficult questions, he may internationally feel intense. He may internationally feel insulted, especially after everything that has ordered for her. But this is where the need to understand Daphne position trust cannot be demanded. It has to be rebuilt. Kadir has an old history of withholding information and um, withholding, making their choices for Daphne even when the intention was protection. The result was finally understand that he can stop revealing every question as an of attack. The marriage ceremony hold therefore can is also there. Daphne says yes, and Daphne says yes and more about whether both characters stop controlling each other's. Daphne controls situations because she fears begins her. Kadir controls situations because he believes he can protect the people he loves by carrying problems alone. But both habits come from understanding place yet together they create. Daphne needs happiness. Kadir often gives protection instead. Kadir needs trust. Daphne often gives investigation instead. Their relationships can only work. They can change this pattern. This is why the memory loss storyline may have been necessary. It to temporarily remove the complicated history and allow both characters to see the simple emotional connections underneath it. Now the history is returning and the real test is the whether that connections was survive. Full knowledge, loving someone when you remembers only the good is easy. Choosing them while remembering every painful detail is much harder. Daphne returning's memory therefore does not destroy the romance, it makes the romance meaningful. Meanwhile, Stolga positions will become increasingly lonely. He may still have influence, money, confidence, and opportunities to interfere, but he cannot create the emotional experience Daphne and Kadir have just shared. His biggest danger is becoming obsessed with the idea that the leadership was created by the accident. If he believes that he will keep, keep trying to accident returns to an earlier, but the pupils cannot uh, simply returns to an earlier emotional point. Daphne has changed because of what she experienced. Even if she decides not to marry Kadir, she cannot forget what she learns about him or herself. Tolga may attempt one large romantic gestures to remind Daphne of their connection rather than comforting Kadir directly. He could try to create a memory that belongs only to him, and Daphne, he may take her somewhere meaningful, remind her of a promise, help her with and problems nobody else understand for a short time. This could create real uncertainty. Daphne choice should not become completely obvious too early. She may still care for deeply about Tolga. The emotional triangle work best if Tolga represent something geniusly valuable rather than simply becoming as outscale. Tolga can represent life. Daphne understand he belongs of a world of planning, status, control, and clear expectations. Kadir represents something more unpredictable. Choosing Kadir may means choosing a life Daphne cannot completely plan. This is why the decision is difficult even beyond romance. Daphne is deciding what kind of person she wants to become. Does he want to control life she spent years building, or is she ready for a relationship that forces her to accept uncertainty? The answer is probably somewhere between those extremes. Daphne does not need to abandon her independence to love Kadir. In fact, a satisfying storyline should follow her to discover that love and independence are not opposite. Her fears may come from believing that choosing someone means losing control. The memory loss experience was especially frightening because she literally lost part of the control. Once she recover him, she may overact by trying to control everything again. The revenge weddings plan again. This reaction perfectly it is Daphne attempt to prove she is still the person making decisions. But the end of that stage she may realize that freely choosing valuability is different from losing control. She can choose Kadir while remaining Daphne. She can love someone without becoming independent on him for her identity. This would give the romance more depend than a simple question of which man is more attractive or more successful. The real journey is Daphne learning that begins strong does not require emotional isolations. Kadir has a similar lessons. Love Daphne does not give him permissions to decide what information she can handle. She may believe he protects people by carrying secrets, solving problems, or stepping in before they can be hurt. Yet this behavior can make Daphne feels powerless. If Kadir geniusly wants a future with her, he must start treating her as a partner rather than someone he needs to rescue. The renewed weddings could symbolize that shift. The first false marriage is existed because Daphne did not know that trust, a meaningful, real commitment can only exist when both know everything important. This is why I predict Daphne will not reveal the recover. She needs time to observe Katir. Revenge idea provides the revenge idea perfect reasons for that delay. She can pretend for a little longer while deciding what she actually wants. At first, she will tell herself she is collecting evidence against him. If reality she may be collecting evidence for herself, she will watch whether Kadir respect boundaries, whether he lies when links would help him, whether he uses her confusions to defeat Tolga, and whether he perfect her even when nobody is watching. One small moment could change everything. Daphne may overhear Kadir's speakings when he does not knowing he is listening. Instead of hearing him celebrate the false marriage, she could hear his guilt. Perhaps he worries that Daphne will hate him when she remembers. Perhaps he admits that happiest days he has experienced were also days he feels guilty about. Daphne would then understand Kadir's emotional positions is an complicated is her own. That could be the moment when revenge stopped feeling satisfying for there. The tone of Daphne plan might quality change. She continued with the weddings, but now she is unsure whether she wants to expose Kadir or genuinely complete the ceremony. The audience would know she remembers when Kadir she is confused. Every romantic moment would have two meanings. Kadir he thinks he is aside deciding whether to make whether the real name. This creates excellent tension because neither characters can be completely honest yet. Kadir hands back because um, he influenced Daphne with memory or uncertain. Daphne looks for memory is uncertain. Daphne looks back because he wants to understand Kadir before revealing. Both are trying to protect themselves and each other at the same time. Eventually, that silence has to be break. I expect the breaking point to arrive near the wedding itself. Something will happen that makes pretending impossible. Stolga may interfere. Laila may reveal information. Our family may something Daphne successfully does not remember. Or Daphne may simply become too emotional to continue the game. The real will be strongest if Kadir learned that remember earlier than she admitted for a moment. The roles will reserve completely. Kadir will become the person who feels decide. This reversal is important because it prevents the story from giving all moral responsibilities to one character. Daphne was hurt because Kadir participated in the false marriage situations. Kadir can be trusted because Daphne continued the situations after recovering her memory. Both will have reasons, both will behave the whereas protecting some things. Both will also have to admit that they use silence instead of trust. Kadir may react strongly when the learns about Daphne revenge. He could believe every affectionate moment then after her memory returns was fake. This would be deeply painful because convinced him that their relationships finally had a structure he might walk away from before Daphne can properly explain for once Daphne would become the person chasing the trust rather than running from it. This would be a useful turning point. Daphne has often been one surrounding by men trying to convince her of both their feelings. If Kadir finally stops chasing, she will have to decide whether she is failing to fight for her that actions would her eventually choose much more weight. She would no longer simple accept Kadir's love, she would actually chooses him. Tolga may misread Kadir desperate as the final chance he could approach. Daphne believes she is now free from the confusions. However, he may be shocked to discover that Daphne is not relieved. She is disadvantaged. That moment could finally make Tolga understand that the situation is no longer about competitions. If Daphne pain comes from losing Kadir, Tolga cannot solve it by offering himself as a replacement. This realization could begin Tolga's own character's development. He may still love Daphne, but genius love could eventually require him to stop using her valuables movement or opportunities. Whether he reaches that point immediately is uncertain. More likely she will struggles against is first he might make one final attempt before accepting the trust. The wedding itself may still happen, but perhaps not in the way anyone expects. Daphne original revenge ceremony could collapse after the trust comes out. Gestures but be confused. Families and agrees. Tolga may reveal Kadir and refuse to continue under false conditions. At that point, Daphne may faces a choice: allow the entire events to end to remove the game from it. The most emotionally satisfied predictions is that Daphne stops the revenge plan herself and publicly takes responsibilities. She does not make a dramatic speech. Her actions could be simple. She can admit thorough simple her decisions that she remembers everything and what happens next must happen with both of them. Knowing the trust, this would destroy the false weddings but create the possibilities of a real relationships. Kadir may not immediately gives this is important. Forgiveness should be automatic simply about because the story uh, was romance. He has a right to feel hurt. Daphne also has a right to feel hurt by what happens before. Their relationships for should be automatic simply because the story want romantic. He has a right to feel hurt. Daphne also has a fight to feel hurt by what happens before. Their relationships needs a period where both stop arguing about whose mistakes was larger and acknowledge that they damage trust is different ways. This period could produce some of the strongest scenes of the series because the characters would finally be dealing with emotional consequence instead of internal tricks. Daphne may try to explain why she needed control. Kadir may explain why the both explanations can be understandable without making the actions correct. The deeper theme becomes clear here. Muhtemel asks, is nobody only who expect the situations is handled survive? People stop showing only the best version of themselves. Kadir has been confused, angry, jealousy, and valuables. Daphne has been Kadir's stubbornness, secretly protective jealousy, and emotionally exposed. Their connection is becoming loose, idealized that makes it more believable. The accidental marriage fantasy gives them an ideal picture. The revenge weddings will probably break that picture. What comes afterward could finally be real. And others major predictions is that the accident itself may return as a mystery. Tolga previously blamed Kadir around the consequence of the accident and the emotional shock surrounding it may be not fully closed. If there was anything suspicious about how events developed before Daphne crash, new information could appear once her memories returns. Memory is often used as dramatics only for romance, but her revealing hidden detail. Daphne may remember some things everyone assumes she had forgotten permanently. That memory could connect the romance plot to the large conflict involving the families and business interests. Perhaps Daphne remembers an argument, a vehicles, a phone conversations, or a details she did not understand before. This information was not immediately prove anything, but it could point toward someone who has been manipulating. Even if Daphne begins investigating quality, her legal mind will become important again. One risk for memory loss storylines is making a normally capable characters too passive. The next stage can correct that by allowing Daphne to use her intelligence instead of waiting for Kadir or Tolga to resolve the problems. She may start connected the piece herself. He could even hide part of remember because expect someone close to them. This would give her another reason not tells everyone that her memory has fully memory returns. What looks like romantic revenge may partly be a cover for a deeper investigation. If the writers take the direction, Daphne behavior could have manipulated layers. She is angry with Kadir, unsure of her own emotions, and secretly searching for the trust about the event at the end of the accident. Kadir may notice that Daphne is behaving differently Daphne anyone else. He knows her too well. Small things will reveal her. She might remember where an object belongs, react to a name she supposedly does not recognize, or avoid asking a question she would need to ask. The memory were truly missing. Kadir could slowly realize that Daphne remembers more than she admits. Instead of confronting her immediately, he may begin him on quality test. This create a clever mirrors between them. Daphne thinks she is testing Kadir. Kadir realizes she is testing him and starts watching her. Both believe they have the advantage. Meanwhile, everybody around him continue preparing for a wedding that neither side fully understand. This could add much needed humor between without weakening the drama. Daphne and Kadir may each attempt to catch the others, revealing too much. Their behavior around the family could become increasingly strange. They are emotionally serious but trapped inside a situation that looks ridiculous from the outside. Romantic comedy works best when the humor comes naturally from the characters' emotional problems rather than from random joke. The baby subject could become part of this mutual testing. Daphne may introduce is expecting to frightening Kadir. Kadir may suspect she is testing him is internationally response with complete seriousness. Then Daphne who exposed discussing means plan or future responsibilities with a man who situations everyone. The situations become funny because Mathers wants to be the first to admit the decision is based on a game. Yet beneath the humor, both have imagined the future that is dangerous knowledge. Once Daphne knows Kadir can image a family with her romantic possibilities. Once Kadir sees uh, Daphne emotionally react to that features, he will understand that her feelings and deeper, larger fight both will carry the knowledge. Tolga may see this change without knowing exactly what happened. People can often recognize when two others have shared an experience that exclude them. Daphne and Kadir will have new private memories, new habits, and perhaps even small jokes creating during the false marriage period. Tolga cannot complete with something he did not experience. This may be lead focus less on a more exposing Kadir weakness. He could return to Kadir past, believing success because Daphne honestly so strong after the memory deceptions. However, Tolga must be careful if he hides his own role is past events while exposing Kadir. Daphne may view that a and others from of becoming extremely sensitive to half trust after discovering how many pupils controlled information around her. She may stop accepting anyone's carefully editing versions of a reality. This would becomes defending behavior for the next several characters. She wants complete trust from everyone. This demand will cause problems because almost nobody around her is completely innocent. Kadir has secrets, Tolga has motives, Lala has plans, family members have hidden information to protect one another. Even Daphne herself is now hiding the returns of her memory that contradictions may eventually make Daphne realize that the trust is not as simple as she wants is to be. People hide information for different reasons. Some hide is to manipulate, other hide it from fear, otherwise hide it out of loyalty. Understanding the reasons does not erase the damage, but it changes how she judges the persons. Kadir secretly matures, therefore become the larger test. He cannot keep saying that every hidden trust was for definite protection. At some stage, he needs to trust her with information that could change how she can see him. This may involve his family history or decisions he made earlier in the story. I predict Kadir will eventually reveal something voluntary before Daphne discovers it elsewhere. That moments could be real proof that he has been changed in the past. Trust often arrives only after pressure. If Kadir chooses honestly while knowing it may cost him Daphne, she will understand that is finally putting her freedoms above his fears. Daphne may not like what she hears, but she will respect and choice. A respect could become the foundations of the relationships long before complete peace arrives. The revenge wedding storylines may therefore end with either a perfect marriage or a permanent separation. Instead, it may end with a new agreements between Daphne and Kadir. Thus, stop pretending they admit that something real exists between them to also admit they are not ready to have like a normal couple until trust is rebuilt. These middle positions allow the series to continue the romance without returning the same triangle again and again. Daphne should not spend every character randomly moving between Kadir and Tolga. That would become repetitive. The strongest predictions is for her believing more increasingly clear, while external problems uh, test whether the chooses relationships can survive. Uh, Tolga can still remain important without constantly being treated as equal romantic options. He has his own pride, relationships, interest, and possible secret. Losing Stephanie relationships possible secret. Losing Daphne romantically could actually make him a more interesting character because he would need a purpose beyond winning her. He may instantly become darker. Heartbreak can create arrestment. Tolga might decide that if Daphne wants Kadir, she should at least know every ugly trust about him. This could push him into a alliance with someone dangerous. He may tell himself he is protecting Stephanie while actually acting from jealousy. Later, he may discover that the person helping him as goals for worse than his own. Tolga could then face a moral decisions. Daphne is allowing to Kadir destroy before he learns the man he considers his arrival. Such a choice and uh, could transform Tolga from a simple rival into a complex character. Laila may be the person most likely to push eventually too far. Um, if he has already used secret and a license to influence relationships, he may assume Tolga will continue sporting any uh, move against Kadir. But Tolga against feelings for Kadir could eventually create limits. He may wants to, but he may wants definite harm. If Lala crosses that limit, Tolga could immediately unexpectedly become the persons who expose her. That possibility would shock everyone, especially Kadir's. A temporary Kadir's Tolga corporations could eventually emerge because both care about Daphne even thought they cannot stand each other. The accidentally has uh, already shown how quickly romantic competitions becomes meaningless when Daphne's step is involved. Uh, if a larger threat appears, both may be forced to once together. These corporations should not suddenly make them friends. Their personalities are too different, and the tensions between them is useful. Instead, he may cooperate while arguing about every decision. Uh, they may cooperations while each believes the other is possible, but both recognize that protecting Daphne or uncovering the trust matters more. Daphne, of course, will hate discovers that he two men are against making plan because the without including her, this could create one of the next major conflict. After everything she experienced, the worst things, Kadir could be trusted in the same protective behavior, even if the dangers is real. Daphne will insist on begins involved. Kadir will need to decide whether he has genuinely learned his lessons. If he include her, their partnerships will become stronger. Image Daphne and Kadir working together rather than constantly hiding things from one another. Daphne has legal intelligence, discipline, and the ability to role um, complicated situations. Kadir brings his own knowledge, instincts, and connections. As a team, they could be much more effective than when they spend half their energy fighting each other. This would also make their romance feels mature. They would still argue, but the argument would no longer automatically means separations. Couples can disagree without destroying the relationships. This is a development Muhtemel can explore as Daphne and Kadir's move out of the early attractions stage. The next chapter, however, is still likely to end on emotional uncertainty. The still we probably not give them the mature partnerships immediately. The wedding's revenge need consequence first. The strongest prediction is that Daphne reaches the ceremony intending to reveal everything, but some things Kadir does not change her timing. Perhaps he gives her an opportunity to leave without embarrassment. Perhaps he make it clear that he will accept any decisions she made. Perhaps he prepares something meaningful that proves he remembers small details about rather than simply focus on the weddings. Daphne becomes unable to carry out the cruel version of her plan. He may still reveal that her memory has returned, but instead of humiliating Kadir, she tells the trust privately or changes the meanings of the ceremony. Kadir is shocked. He realizes she has not for some time. His happiness collapses because he begins questioning every moment. They recently shared. Daphne tries to explain, but Kadir is too hard to listen. He leaves. The ceremony falls apart. Everyone assumes that the real love story begins. Until this point, Kadir has usually been the person trying to keep through Daphne defenses. Now Daphne has to break through his. He will finally experience what it feels like to know what she wants, someone who has no longer trust their intentions. That reveals can force in Rom's character's growth. Daphne may intentionally tries to solve the problems logically. She could explain the timeline, explain why she was angry, explain why she only intended to test him, and explain that her feelings changed while the plan was happening. None of those explanations will immediately repair the emotional damage. For perhaps the first time, Daphne will discover that love cannot always be argued like a legal case. She cannot prove her feelings with logic. She has to demonstrate them. That, that may means giving Kadir time. It may means defending him when doing so cost her something. It may means choosing his side publicly before he knows whether he will forgive her. Most importantly, it may mean telling Stolgar currently that she cannot continue allowing him to hope for something she no longer intends to give. That conversations with Tolga will be essential. Definite biggest mistake would be keeping Tolga emotionally close simply because she fears losing Kadir. If she does not, she will repeat the same uncontainedly that caused pain before. A more devolved Daphne should recognize that Being honest with Tolga is part of the honest with herself. She can care about him and still close the romantic door. Tolga will hurt, but clarity is kinder than continue false hope. This would become the first time Daphne make a choices without waiting for one of the men to force the situations. She chooses at that is the point. Muhtemel ask begins with a woman who thought she could organize her life through effort, responsibilities, and control. Love enters that systems like an unexpected problems. At first, Daphne treated feelings as another issue to manage. She tried to measure pupils, predict consequences, and avoid the options that could hurt her most. But love refuses to behave like a business plan. The accident took control away from the completely. The fake marriage showed her life she had never permitted herself to image. The revenge weddings could be her attempt to take control back, and the failures of that revenge may finally teach her that real love is not about having complete control. It is making a choice while knowing there are no guarantees. There is where I believe the story is heading. Kadir will not Daphne because Tolga loses, he will move closer to her because Daphne begins understanding what she actually feels when nobody else is making the decisions for her. Tolga will not lose control, he suddenly becomes unworthy. He will lose a romantic ground because loves cannot be created through persistence alone. Daphne final decisions will come from the persons she becomes through all this experience. Before that can happen, however, the next chapters will probably give us one last period of choice. The renewed married idea will separate through both families. People will react emotionally. Some will celebrate, some will uh, doubt Daphne conditions, some will worry Kadir is moving too quickly. Tolga will refuses to accept that everything is settled. Lala will look for a weakness. Daphne will secretly manage her revenge plan while fighting feelings she did not expect. Kadir will experience happiness mixed with guilt. Every character will believe they understand what it happens, while almost nobody understands full situations. That confusion is exactly what can make the chapters entertaining, but beneath all the comedy, jealousy, and family choice, one serious question will control everything. When Daphne had forgotten the past, she intensely allowed Kadir close. Now that she remembers everything, will she still chooses him? My prediction is yes, but not immediately and not easy. She will fight the answers. She will become angry with Kadir. She will try to punish him. She will test him. She will test herself. She will probably question whether the closeness creating during the memory loss could count as real. She may allow Tolga to believe she tells his as opportunities. She may even convenience herself that walking away from both men would be safer. But every attempt to return to the told Daphne will fail because she is no longer that woman. She has experienced what it feels like to let someone into her daily life. She has experienced Kadir not only as a rival problems or romantic possibilities as a partner inside as image marriage. Once that possibilities has becomes emotionally real, it cannot simply disappears when the memory returns. That is the real dangers of the fake marriage. If may have revealed the trust, Daphne might believe something that was not real, but her heart responded to something that was. The coming story will be about separating those two things. When he succeeds, Kadir may discover that the most important part of those days was never the false titles of husband and wife. It was how naturally they became a team. And if Daphne finally reaches that conclusion, the reunion weddings that begins as could become the first step toward something others of them pretending anymore. The game will end, the choice will begin, and the choice may change every relationship. Is Mahmoud asked. The weddings game changed everything. Mahmoud asked now seems ready to make away from the simple questions of whether they will remember her past and toward a such more dangerous questions. What will she do with everything she remembers? Daphne recovering the memory changes the balance completely. Recovering the memory changes the balance completely because he is no longer the confused woman who needs everyone around her to protect her from the trust she is once against is intelligence, careful, a strong woman who studies every situation before making her move. However, there is one major difference that Daphne who has returns is carrying memory from two different emotional lives. She remembered the painful reality she lives before the accident, but she also remembered the strange experience she experienced while believing Kadir was already her husband. These two versions of her life cannot easily lived together. This is why her decisions to continue the marriage game looks like revenge on the outside, but underneath it may becomes one of the emotional experiment of the entire story. In the previous prediction, the biggest focus was on Daphne. Slowly was on Daphne. Daphne slowly has been that short as a future's marriage had been affair of to image, but the next development should take the story is anger's directions instead of focusing only on Daphne questioning her own heart. The coming event may show that happens what Kadir start questioning Daphne until now. Kadir has been the person carrying the dangerous secret. He knew they were not married, while Daphne believing they were. He believed every day, knowing that one sentence would destroy the strange life they were sharing. But now that Daphne remembers everything and continue acting if the marriage is real. The secret change hands. Daphne become the person hiding the trust. Daphne become the person living inside an illusions. These reservoirs can completely change their relationship. At Kadir may not understand what Daphne is doing. He will probably believe that the memories and returning slowly, and that he still feels emotionally connected to the life they created after the accident. When Daphne suggests reunions their marriage, his first reactions may be disbelief. Kadir has wanted Daphne to choose him from a long time, yet he knows the situations surrounding her memory is complicated. For that reason, he may hesitate before accepting. He could wonder whether agreeing could be finished. He may fear that Daphne will remembers every after the ceremony and immediately regret what happens. But Daphne will probably remove those doubts carefully. She knows exactly what Kadir wants to hear, and because she remembers their history against, she also knows exactly where his emotional weaknesses are. Daphne revenge will not need loud anger. In fact, the plan becomes much more effective if she remains unusually calm. Kadir expects Daphne to become furious when her memory returns. If she starts should demanding explanations or leaving his house, he will understand what has happened immediately. Instead of Daphne may choose the opposite reactions. He may become warmer. He may act more comfortable around him. She may ask questions about their supposed marriage as though she will want to discover that shared life. Kadir could keep believing that the strange situations has unexpectedly brought them together. The more hopeful he becomes, the more powerful Daphne final reveals will appears to be. But this plan contains a weakness from the first moment. Daphne understands Kadir's will enough to manipulate his hopes, but that also means she understands his feelings. Every time she pushes the game future, she will see how seriously he takes it. She may expect him to enjoy the situations in a selfish way, yet Kadir's and may repeatedly surprise her by showing hesitations instead of immediately celebrating the renewed weddings. He could ask whether she is curtained instead of using the opportunity to keep Tolga away. He could give Daphne space to think instead of forcing a romantic closeness. He could become more careful around her. Daphne wants evidence that Kadir took advantage of her conditions. What she may find instead is evidence that he was fighting himself throughout the entire situation. This is where the revenge plan can begin producing an unexpected result. Daphne wants Kadir to feel guilty, but Kadir already feels guilty. She wants him to understand that hiding the trust was wrong. Yet Kadir may already know that better than anyone. If he had no guilt, revenge would be easy. Daphne could expose him and walk away. But if she walked that through has been carrying emotional pain, even days, she will have to question whether she is pushing him for something he did or pushing him for because she is afraid of what she felt while living with him. The baby idea becoming the moment when the game moves beyond Daphne control. Daphne may mention wanting a child because she wants to push Kadir into a panic marriage can still be treated as a romantic fantasy, but taking about a baby forces the futures into the conversations definitely make the to step backward the moment responsibility becomes real. She might believe this will reveal that his feelings are more about winning her than buildings in real with life. She may want to see fear in his face, but if Kadir does not react with fears, Kadir would become completely silent for a few seconds, not because he disliked the idea, but because it touches something he never allowed himself to image seriously. His emotional reactions may immediately tells Daphne that she has touched a real dream. Kadir has spent so much time fighting for Kadir that he may never have allowed himself to think beyond simply begins with her. Hearing those possibilities of a family could suddenly turn the feelings into something much larger. Daphne would then discover that she has created a test, chooses a warm she has was not prepared to receive. The situations become even more difficult if Kadir responds responsibilities rather than romantically. He might not immediately become excited. Instead, he could say through his actions that such a decision could only happen when Daphne is completely healthy, completely curtained, and completely aware of their real history. This his reactions, that reactions would damage Daphne revenge more than any romantic declarations. She is trying to prove that Kadir cares more about processing her than protecting her freedom. If he refuses to advantage of the situations even when she offers him exactly what he wants, her argument against he began collapsing. Daphne became irritated by his questions. These irritations could too strange to everyone around them. After all, and she still believed they are married. Why should Kadir's responsible behaviors make her angry? But the real reasons could be that Daphne needs him to make a mistake. She needs Kadir to behave selfishly because then her anger will feel simple. Every time he behaves carefully, he forces Daphne to confront the possibility that the situation is more complicated than she wants it to be. At the same time, Kadir may slowly notice small changes. Is Daphne memories does not return without leaving signs. Daphne might recognize something the supposedly should not know. She could remember the locations of an object, understand a reference to an older argument, to react too quickly when Tolga's name is mentioned. She might refuse a phrase connected to something that happens before the accident. Kadir is emotional, but he is not foolish. Once several small signs appears, suspicious could begin growing. Rather than confronting Daphne immediately, Kadir might decide to watch her. This would create a new game Inside the exciting game, Daphne believes she is secretly planning revenge. Kadir begins secretly wondering whether Daphne remembers. Both characters continue preparing for the marriage ceremony while each tries to discover what the other truly knows. Their normal argument could suddenly become full of hidden meanings. A simple question about the past becomes a trap. A casual movement about Tolga becomes a test. Even an ordinary family dinner could become dangerous because one wrong reaction might reveal everything. These directions could give the story both tension and humor. Image Daphne pretending not to remember a place she knows perfectly well while Kadir intentionally takes her there to test her. She might pretend to be surprised, but Kadir noticed that she automatically walks toward the current entrance. Daphne realized her mistakes and invent an excuse. Kadir said nothing, yet his expression changes. From that moment, the audience understands that he is beginning to see through her plan. Kadir's made then decisions not to expose her because he wants to understand why she is pretending. This is important. If he immediately says that he knows her memory returns, the story ends too quickly. But if he remains silent, the balance becomes much more interesting. Kadir could begin cooperating with Daphne game intentionally. He might accept the wedding's renewals while knowing there is probably a trap. Why would he do that? Because he wants to discover whether anything Daphne is showing him is real. Kadir's positions would then become emotionally painful. He knows Daphne may be planning revenge, but he also sees moments that do not feel fake. Her smile sometimes comes too naturally. Her jealousy around and others' movements may appear before she has time to control it. Her concerns when Kadir is too troubles may be immediate. She may touch his hand without thinking and he quickly remembers she is supposed to be acting. These movements could make Kadir believe there somewhere inside the revenge there is also love for Daphne. Discovering that Kadir suspect her would create another layers of uncertainty. She may intentionally believe she will have still complete control. However, Kadir could start responding in ways she did not expect. When she tries to shock him, he remains calm. When she tries to make him jealousy, he refuses to react strongly. When she talks about their futures, he takes the conversation seriously. Daphne may wonders whether Kadir show how somehow knows what she is doing. Instead of stopping, she may make the game more difficult. Daphne pride will not allow her to easily admit defeat. She could decide that if Kadir suspect her, she will create situations even he cannot understand. This may lead to renewed weddings becoming larger and more public than originally planned. Daphne could involve both families believing that Kadir's will eventually becomes nervous and reveals what he knows. The families, however, will probably makes everything more complicated. Some members may be delighted um, by the idea of Daphne and Kadir's making their relationships official again. Others may know enough about the memory problems to feel uncomfortable. There could be disagreement over whether the ceremony should happen at all. Kadir may have to definitely right to make decisions, even though he privately suspects she is hiding some things. Selma could become especially important here. Salma has connected with major trust surrounding Daphne. If she realizes Daphne remembers um, measures, if she everything, she may try to speak with her privately. Daphne might ask Selma might not reveal that trust because she wants to handle Kadir herself. Kadir could strongly disagree. She may warn Daphne that playing with Kadir emotions will not solve what happens, yet Daphne is still angry, will insist that Kadir needs to experience the same harmless she experienced. Selma warnings may later prove correct. Revenge story rarely remains controlled once their peoples becoming involved. A plan means to teach one person a lesson can quickly hurt several innocent pupils. The renewed weddings may make family members emotionally invested. Some may spend money preparing, others may travels. Pupils may repair all disagreement because they believe the marriage represented a new beginning. Daphne may suddenly see that exposing Kadir publicly would not hurt him, it could humiliate his family as well. This is probably when Daphne begins as changing the final stage of plan. She may still intend to correct Kadir, but she will no longer want to do it in front of everyone. The revenge becomes more private. She may decide to allow the ceremony to approach its final moment and then ask Kadir to speak alone. What happens during that private confrontations could change the entire story. Before that happens, Tolga is unlikely to remain quiet. For Tolga, the renewed wedding is unacceptable. He already had to watch Daphne live with Kadir while believing they were married. Now seeing her voluntary move toward another ceremony will make him believe the becoming confusion has become permanent. Tolga suspects that Daphne's memory has returned, especially if she behaves differently around him because he has Daphne's personality. He may realize faster than most pupils that she is hiding some things. Tolga might confront Daphne private and ask whether she truly remembers. Daphne could refuse to answer directly. Tolga, that will be enough for Tolga. He will understand that the wedding is not the appears to be at first. He will feel relief if he remembers everything and still planning the ceremony perhaps is not a trick. Tolga could believe she is about is reject Kadir's publicly. He may even spoil the plan because he thinks it will remove Kadir from her life. This would be a serious mistake. Tolga may become too confident after learning about Daphne revenge. He might believe that once Kadir is humiliated, Daphne will naturally return to him, but Daphne is not planning her futures around Tolga. Her argue with Kadir does not automatically means loves for Tolga. Tolga may discover this man. He tries to discuss what happens after the revenge, and Daphne refuses to make him part of the answers. That conversations could finally shows Tolga show Daphne has emotionally moved. She may tells him through her behavior that through whatever happens between her and Kadir belongs to them. Tolga does not get to treat their conflict or as an opportunity. This will hurt him pride because of a long time he has divided. Kadir makes a chance to move close to Daphne. Tolga may then face difficult choice. He can respect Daphne boundaries or an inheritance based on their conflict surrounding the series. He is more likely or interfere before learning his lessons. He could try to force the trust into the opens before Daphne is ready. He may tell Kadir Daphne that remembers everything. He is protecting Daphne from continuing the dangerous game, but Kadir may already not if Tolga approaches Kadir confidently and says Daphne has recovered her memory. Kadir's reactions could shock him. Instead of surprising, Kadir could remain calm. Tolga would suddenly realize that ceremony anyway. This would leave Tolga completely outside their emotional game. This could be one of the first moments when Tolga truly understands that Daphne may have devolved our connections he cannot easily break. Even when they are angry with each other, they are communicating through behavior, history, and emotions in a way Tolga cannot enter. Tolga responds to becoming more aggressive in another area, business. If he cannot stop the weddings directly, he might create a professional crisis that forces Daphne to leave the preparations. The holdings um, company has already been has important source of pressure and conflict, so using business weapons would connect to the romantic storylines with the larger plot. A sudden legal problems, public scandals, financial threat, or challenge to an important project could appear just before the wedding. A definite professional insist would immediately takes over. She might have to choose between solving the crisis and counting the ceremony. Kadir could offer to postpone everything, showing once again that he the value Daphne real life more than his fantasy of marriage. This could create another unwanted test for Daphne. She may have expected Kadir to become angry if his wedding is interrupted, yet he may be first person encourage her to handle the problems. Tolga, who created and encouraged the crisis, would then accidentally give them another opportunity to prove himself. Daphne wondering whether her revenge has stopped making sense, but even as anger's weakness and other trust could um, make it strongest again. Lala remained one of the characters most capable of changing the direction. Suddenly, if Lala discovers Daphne memories has returns, she may become afraid. A confused Daphne was easier to manage because he could connect all events are fully recovers. Daphne can begins rebuilding the timelines of everything that happens before the accident. She can remember conversations, suspicious behavior, missing information, and coordination. Lala could decide that the best Daphne is to create conflict between Daphne and Kadir before they start comparing what they know. She may find a secret from Kadir past, a secret from um, past has not yet been fully explained. Instead of laying, Lala may reveals only the most demanding part of the trust. This is much more dangerous because Daphne may not be able to dismiss it easily. For example, Daphne could reveal evidence showing Kadir knew about an earlier scenes before he admitted the evidence may not explain why Kadir stayed silent. Daphne, already sensitive because of the memory deceptions, would interrupt the new discovery and proof. Kadir has a habit of deciding what she discovers to know. Suddenly, her revenge plan would not longer feel childish to her. Her angry word returns with full forces. Kadir may realize something changed about not why. Daphne, who has started softening, becomes distant against. The wedding's preparations continue, but the harms despairs. Kadir could understand that someone has shown her something. Instead of hiding, Kadir may finally choose the response he should have chosen many times before complete honesty. He could and others everything connected to his past and place from the front of Daphne, not only the secret to discover but also the things she has not yet asked about. Kadir may understand that defining on lie at a time will repair trust. It will want Daphne to believe time he has to stop managing the trust. This moment could become more important than the weddings itself. Daphne expect another excuse. Instead, Kadir gives her information that could make her live more forever. This changes the meaning of trust. True honest is not telling the trust only when you knowing it will help you. True honestly sometimes means revealing that man destroy what you want. If Kadir that Daphne revenge will become almost impossible to continue. She may be angry, but now she asks Kadir is trying to change, punishing someone for old behavior while they are actively correcting if may no longer satisfying her. Daphne could spend the night before the ceremony unable to sleep. This would be very different from the earlier part of the story when he often struggles between Kadir and Tolga. Now the conflict is inside her. She already knows which man affect her most strongly. The uncertainty is whether she trusts more enough to choose that relationships. She may reveal everything that happens from the beginnings. Kadir mistake his jealousy, his stubborn behavior, the secret, the moment when the hurt her, but she hurt also remember the moment when the spots beside without asking from anything, the accident, the false marriage, his restraints, his fears of losing her, his feelings, willings to reveal painful trust for the first time. Daphne made to spoke, asking whether Kadir is perfect. He clearly is not. Instead, he asked whether the imperfect man of front of him, someone willing is grow with her. That is a much more mature question. Tolga may also spend the night before the ceremony, make the final decisions. He will expose Daphne revenge publicly. He can still create choice. He may even have proved that Daphne recovered her memory earlier. If he revealed it in front of everyone, Kadir will feel humiliated. Daphne will become angry, but the ceremony will probably collapse for a short time moment. Tolga may prepare to exactly that, but something that perhaps he sees Daphne also before their ceremony and notice that she is not celebrating revenge. She is nervous, emotional, and clearly struggling with real feelings. Tolga may realize that destroying the weddings will not make Daphne happy. This can create the first truly selfish decisions from Tolga is a long time. He might decide not to expose the trust. That does not means to suddenly expose Daphne and Kadir. It simply means he refuses to hurt Daphne for his own benefit. If this happens, Tolga becomes much more interesting because he begins moving beyond the roles of jealousy is real. However, Lala may not have the same resistance. If Tolga refuses to entrust, Lala could decide to use information herself. She may weather a secret. Um, the ceremony becomes the perfect moment because emotions are high and everyone is present. Lala could arrange for the trust about Daphne's recovers. Memory too becomes public just before the final moment. Image Kadir standing ready while Daphne approach. Both already know the situation is complicated. Daphne has decided she will find the trust him before the complete anything, but before she can speak, somebody revealed that Daphne has remembers everything for days. The room goes silent. Everyone's toward Daphne. Their expressions changes even though the already suspected the trust. Why would he still look hurt if you knew? Because suspicious is different from confrontations. Until that moment, part of Kadir may have hoped the wrong. He may have hoped Daphne truly believed in the futures she was described. Now he knows the entire reunion weddings begins a game. Daphne immediately understands what he is thinking. She tries to explain that the plan changed, but Kadir only heard the beginning. He heard that she wanted revenge. He heard that the baby conversations was part of the plan. He hears that the romantic preparations was originally designed to hurt him. Everything that have started feelings real suddenly becomes uncurtains. Kadir may ask himself which moments where genius was Daphne happens real. Was her concerns clear? Did he really become jealous? Did he ever imagine a future with him, or was very moment calculated? This emotional confusions could be more painful than simple rejections. If Daphne had simply she said did not love him, Kadir could away from with curtains, but he knows some parts of many have been real and false. He cannot separate them. Kadir may leave the ceremony without creating public arguments. These quiet captures would be strong than shoutings. Daphne would expect the control. The moment suddenly losing him, the families begins arguing. Some blames Daphne, others blame Kadir for creating the first false marriage situations. Tolga stands aside, realizing the situation has become much more than he wanted. Leila quality believes her place success. Daphne does some things nobody expects. She follows Kadir. This matters because throughout much of their relationships, Kadir has been the person's moving toward Daphne. He tries to explain, he tries to stop her leaving. He reacts when Tolga gets close, he fights for and others change. Now Daphne has to become the active person. He finds Kadir away from everyone, but he does not want another explanation. Daphne realized word will not immediately fix the problems. Kadir may tell her through his behavior that she wanted revenge, and now he understands how it feels to live inside a false story. But Daphne no longer feels victorious. This is the moment she understands the difference between revenge and justice. Justice was forcing Kadir to understand why the depictions hurt her. Revenge becomes creating the same hurt again, but repeating the damage. Daphne did not repair anything. She simply changed who was suffered. This realization could become an important turning point in her characters. Daphne may apologize without defining herself. This would be difficult for her because she normally explains the logic behind everything she does. She wants people to understand why her decisions made sense. This time she may simply admit that she wanted to trust him because she was hurt, not excuse, not argument, not attempt to prove she was more correct. This honest may surprise Kadir more than anything. He may still for forgiveness her immediately, and he should not if his stories repairs everything in one emotional moment. The consequence we feel weak away. Instead, Kadir may tell Daphne he needs a distance. For the first time, Daphne must accept that request. She returns to the ceremony alone. Everyone expects an explanation. Daphne does not expose Kadir's mistake to protect herself. She takes responsibilities for her past. This can change how several characters sees her. Selma may recognize her. Daphne is finally understand what happens. Tolga may feel both sympathy and disappointment. Leila may realize the separations did not create the joy she expected because Daphne is refusing to turn everyone against to Kadir. The wedding is cancelled, but the relationship is not completely finished. The next phase begins with silence. Kadir stopped preparing whenever Daphne expected him. He focused on work, on family problems. He does not call. He does not ask about Tolga. He does not react when he heard Daphne's name. At first, Daphne may believe this is anger. Then she realized something more dangerous. Kadir is trying to tell her go. Jealousy is easier to fight because jealousy means the person still wants something. Silence forces Daphne to control the possibility that Kadir is protecting himself by accepting the end. Daphne may become restless. She expects Kadir to return. After claiming down, she does not. She might create a small excuse to contact him. A business question, an object left at his house, a family matters. Kadir answers quality but keeps the conversation short. Daphne begins unexperienced the emotional positions Kadir occupied for so long. She knows what she feels, the other person refuses to trust it. This reversal is unnecessary because it forces Daphne to prove love through constantly rather than emotions. One dramatic confession cannot repair the damage. Kadir needs to see that Kadir definite reactions remains the same even when he stops chasing her. Tolga becomes extremely important during this separation. He now the opportunity he wanted. Kadir is gone. Daphne is emotionally unbreakable. Nothing prevents Tolga from approaching her, but if Tolga has grown ever slightly, he may hesitate. He could tell Daphne that he will help the she needs sports, but he refused to use the situations against Kadir. Daphne may be surprised. She may because used to Tolga turning every conflict into a romantic openings. He resists allow their relationships to become more honest. They might eventually speak about why Daphne would never completely choose him. It is not because Tolga lacked good qualities. It is not because every feelings between them was false. The problem is that Daphne here react differently to Kadir's. Tolga may finally understand that there is no argument capable of changing state. Love is not a court case. You cannot will simply because your evidence is stronger. These realizations may hurt Tolga deeply but also free him. For the first time, he can begin building a story that does not depend on defeating Kadir. Meanwhile, Kadir distance may not last peacefully. The business conflict could return at exactly the wrong moment. The problems will connected with the partners holding the foundation ceremony and old deals or the family secret may require Kadir and Daphne to work together again. Methods want it. Daphne fears Kadir will think she arranged the situation. Kadir does not want to reopen feeling he is trying to bury, but circumstances forces them into the same situations. This is not flirting, no obvious jealousy, or no romantic scheme. They speak only about the problem, yet the tensions between them becomes stronger because they are trying so hard to act normal. Daphne noticed how tired Kadir looked up. Kadir noticed Daphne stopped weird, saw carrying some things connected to the failed weddings. Um, Nathan's comments same small details say what dialogue cannot. The investigations into the business problems may eventually reveal Lala involvement. Daphne begins connected recent events. The timings of the evening exposures was too perfect. Someone know who remember. Someone wanted Kadir to learn publicly. The information did not appear by accident. Daphne started investigating without telling Kadir because she fears he will think she is creating another game. This time, however, she makes a better decision. Before taking any major action, she goes to Kadir and tells him what she has found. That choice is significant. The old Daphne might investigate alone and reveal the result later. The new Daphne understands that rebuilding that trust requires transparency during the process, not after it. Kadir is suspicious at first, but he listens. Daphne shows him evidence rather than asking for blind trust. Together, they discover that someone deliberately turned their private conflict into a public disaster. This does not erase Daphne's responsibilities. She still created the revenge plan, but it revealed that another person made sure the worst possible versions became public. Kadir began seeing the situations with more complexity. His angers remain, yet the walls between two weakness slightly. They work together to identify the source. Tolga may rescue a suspect because he knows about Daphne's memory. Kadir immediately exhumes Tolga, exposes her. Daphne refuses to accept conclusions without proof. This creates tensions because Kadir's belief Daphne is Tolga's again. However, Daphne is choosing Tolga. She is choosing fairness. Eventually, then discovers Tolga and the information, but did not reveal it. This surprised Kadir's. Tolga could even provide evidence pointing toward Lala. For the first time, all three characters may stand on the same side of one problem. The cooperation is comfortable. Kadir and Tolga continue insulting each other's decisions. Daphne becomes excited, trying to keep them focused. But beneath the arguments, a new respect begins forming. Kadir realized that could have destroyed the weddings himself and chose not to. Tolga realized Kadir's feelings for Daphne were never simply about competing. Daphne sees both men becoming slightly less controlled by jealousy. This does not them into friends, it simply makes the triangle more mature. Their investigations eventually leads to a larger secret. Lala may not have acted alone. Someone connected to the family or company could have helped her. The purpose may be larger than separating Daphne and Kadir. Their relationships may simply have been the easiest weakest to exploit. If Daphne and Kadir remains emotionally divided, then they are less likely to notice what is happened is business. The revenge weddings before becomes part of a larger manipulations. The twist allow